Do you have a recollection of ever talking with Brian Marshall about the house in Greenville?
No, not really. I didn't think he was able to understand what was going on.
Mr. Haynes, what's your understanding of Brian Marshall's disability?
Objection, vague and ambiguous, lacks foundation, calls for an expert and or medical opinion.
You want me to answer it?
Yes.
Brian's come a long way. He had a lot of difficulty up until the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, he's seemed to have been doing very well for the problem he has. And he needs a lot of help with knowing that he's a man instead of injured. And I try to give him, especially the last 5 years, I give him a lot of credit for what he's been able to accomplish.
Do you recall what your concern was with respect to Brian receiving his money when he turned 18?
The fact that his father wanted to have his money and was fighting for my daughter's estate, I felt I wanted to know how the money was going to be utilized. And at that time, I had to look for an avenue to protect the money. So I hired a lawyer to put it into an irrevocable trust, which he did. His name is Jerry Cohn, the lawyer for my grandson, and he set up a trust fund. And so the money could not be touched by his father or the government because he's disabled. Brian is disabled.
Jerry Cohn.
A lawyer that I hired in Brian's behalf.
What did you hire him to do?
To draw up an irrevocable trust to protect Brian's money from his father and the government.
And Mr. Cohn did that for you?
Yes, he did.
You love your grandson?
Absolutely.
But would your love for your grandson cause you to make any lies or misstatements or mischaracterizations for him under oath today?
No. I've always spoken to Brian.
Back in the early 90s, did you have any opinion about whether Xylo Marshall or Brian Marshall was susceptible to others' influence regarding money?
Consider objections.
Yes, no question.
What was your opinion?
Here is a February 8th, 1994 letter from my grandfather. Dear Mrs. Fightmaster, thank you so much for your detailed letter of February 4th, 1994, and the recommendation concerning Brian's assets. You must know that I agree with your suggestions. Brian has been very much aware of his ability to ask the court to turn over his assets to him. After your meeting last year, that was the first thing he mentioned to me. However, he agrees with the notion that he could be his own worst enemy if he didn't arrange for someone to protect his funds. I have mixed feelings about Brian's current attitude. The new program, coupled with his free, independent lifestyle, strengthened his self-confidence, right or wrong. He is now more opinionated. However, he has also become more suspicious and aware that there are people out there he must avoid. Emotionally, like any of us, he could fall into a trap, but that can happen anytime in his life. Okay? And goes to Dr. Gina Dill and Sharon Johnson with their actions against me by walking away from a summary judgment. Okay, back to the letter. My concern was that after money is spent to set up a guardianship here in Florida, Brian suddenly decided to demand his financial freedom. Surely, no one would have the right to stop him. Aside from the above, the current situation has changed somewhat with respect to me becoming the watchdog for Brian's assets. As you may recall, Brian's grandmother made the current arrangement without my knowledge or input. She also advised Brian that she did not want to communicate with me about the new program. As far as I can determine thus far, the program appears terrific. His grandmother, who always had more influence with Brian, may have caused him to believe if I were in charge of his fund and then died, my wife Carol might be entitled to his money. And again, my recommendation, this is what Lois did to me. My aunt, taking all my money, my inheritance. Brian made excuses to justify that his grandmother should become the watchdog over his funds. Obviously, I backed away and am assorting you that Brian or his grandmother will advise you accordingly. I am sure she will do the best she can. Perhaps you should send a copy of your February 4th, 1994 letter to Brian's grandmother.
There was no question about that fact. He was young, uneducated, absolutely not.
No question about what, sir?
No question that he needed help and sought it from various family parties. That's
Various.
I'm sorry I made that back in. No, he definitely did have opinions. In fact, he even has a friend of mine who befriended him and has until this day in Florida. When he lived in Florida, he met him and he somehow got friendly with my friend and called him when I didn't give him the answers that he wanted.
Called him about what?
Called him about whether he should do this or that with money, buying stocks. Brian was loosely involved with things that he didn't understand. And when he didn't get information from me that I didn't think he needed, he went to my friend. My friend recommended certain things, and that was the relationship that had to do with whether Brian looked for help or not. Brian did not have a relationship with his father. He had a beautiful relationship with his mother. And when she died, he needed people to help him. And there were people around that helped.
Was his father one of those people around to help him?
Oh, no.
Objection. Calls for him to, hang on just a minute. Calls for him to guess and speculate, lacks foundation, incomplete, hypothetical, vague, and ambiguous.
No way. In the little bit of relationship that I had, he was a bum.